Okay, it's working. Hello?
Hello, hello, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone, grab a seat. My name is Lorraine Ronke and I am your moderator for today's event, By Africa, for Africa, a new approach to collaboration between Africa's institutions and CGIAR for climate action in agriculture. We're here today together to explore some very important questions. How can we sustainably support truly African-led research, innovation, and scaling? How can we transition to a 21st century African-led agricultural research system? CGIAR has played a critical role, we all know, in global agricultural development for 5 decades. And to bring innovation to scale, particularly for climate change, is one of today's preoccupations. It's certainly the preoccupation of a project called Accelerating Impacts of CGIAR Climate Research for Africa, or ICRA, which is building partnerships to scale climate-smart agriculture and transform climate services across Africa. It has developed a vision for scaling action based on its experience from its first phase of operation. And what's interesting is with the prospect of ICRA's additional finance from the World Bank, the project wants a clear exit strategy. That means an exit strategy that would enable African partners to take forward their own climate agenda, aligned to the ambitions of the African Union Climate Change and Resilient Development Strategy and Action Plan. So there's many reasons why this matters so much, and we're going to start with the most important reason, farmers. I'd like to introduce you to Phoebe Mwangangi, a smallholder farmer from Makueni County in Kenya. Phoebe is a leader farmer in her community in that she was an early adopter of practices of climate-smart agriculture thanks to projects supported by different CGIAR centers in ICRA in partnership with African institutions, and now shares her knowledge with many other farmers. Phoebe, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Phoebe Mwangangi. I'm from Kenya, Makueni County, a farmer. Makueni County is a bit arid, very rich to rainfall, and most of the time we've got to do some innovations to be able to harvest. Being a small-scale farmer, I've been doing green grams and other drought-tolerant crops like the millets. In trying to adopt these systems, the innovations which we have been trying to adopt in order to be able to bring forth food on the table for the farmer, we have collaborated, not only the farmers, but other institutions like ICRA who have come even to support us in this one. In this COP28, I'm bringing the voice of the farmer. The voice of the farmer, what the farmer expects from the researchers, the policymakers, and others who are involved in climate-smart innovations. I've done a few sessions in soil health. I've also participated in financing climate innovations. And also, I'm glad that I'm here to talk about Africa for Africa. Climate change is true. It has caught up with us even in Makueni. with a small-scale farmer. We have tried innovations like having the farmer groups and also the community groups which are doing we working together to improve on innovations like deep tillage. We're doing minimum disturbance of the soil, application of manure in an effort to increase our production. The farmer is dependent on the field. For example, I have a 6-acre piece of land. 3 goes to crop production. 2.5 goes to pastures for the livestock. And you see, if we don't have innovations to increase the production, then we may not be able to continue sustaining ourselves. In this session, where we're having other stakeholders, researchers, policymakers, who have come together to discuss this information. I hope by the end of the discussion, we'll see the place of the farmer. I hope by the end of this discussion, we'll see the farmer being financed, being enabled to adopt the climate-smart innovations. Some require finances, like the mechanization, the seeds, and others. For example, we have a program where we're doing with ICRA, trying to reach more farmers to bring them on board. Being a lead farmer, I've had community meetings. We have brought on board 300 farmers who have adopted these innovations. In this season, when we are doing the farming in Kenya, we are expecting a better harvest than before. A greater percentage of the people who have adopted these innovations are likely to harvest enough for their families and also for sale. So the partners who are in this session, I hope I'll see the farmer partnering with you in a better way. I hope I'll see the farmer understanding your policies, understanding your resource of research in a language that the farmer can implement. It's my hope that by end of this session, the farmer will have a truly African-led agenda which will help to formulate and also to practice scaling climate-smart agriculture and practices to another million farmers, just like I've benefited, that they shall benefit and bring food on the table. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phoebe. So I think that's a pretty clear mandate. And with that mandate in hand, let's continue our exploration of African-led. I am delighted to introduce you to Maniewu Mutamba, Head of Agriculture, Food Systems, and Rural Transformation at the Africa Union Development Agency. He will be sharing with us the African Union vision for climate-smart agriculture in Africa. Mr. Mutamba, welcome.
Thank you very much. Each time I speak after Phoebe, I always feel like she has done my job. I think she's been very clear. She's essentially given us the marching orders. So I don't even know whether it's useful for me to say anything after her. To the extent that what she has said resonates very strongly with the African Union, particularly ourselves in terms of the way we see ourselves in this landscape and our role, and how we should support our member states and farmers more specifically. I think she's been very clear, and in many ways, I think our perspective with respect to climate-smart agriculture, with respect to the way we interact with our partners like ICRA and other systems is informed by the realities of what is obtaining on the ground, our interaction and the feedback that we get from practitioners, from farmers, from private sector, players that are part of the value chains. And I should say from the African Union, particularly the African Union Development Agency where I work at NEPAD in Midrand, Johannesburg, the thinking is that we are at a pivotal moment when it comes to climate-smart agriculture, and we've communicated this very clearly with our partners, ICRA specifically, because of the critical role that they're playing within our programs with respect to supporting our reorientation of our programming, in supporting the relaunching of our climate-smart agriculture programs particularly. We are at that point where we really feel that we need to take a deep look at ourselves, our performance, where we are coming from. Very clear that there's been meaningful progress that has been made and meaningful good things that has happened, but obviously we are a continental institution, so we're not satisfied with small gains. We want big gains. So we are very ambitious, and from where we are, we feel that we really need to make that next big step when it comes to climate-smart agriculture, and particularly because we feel that as a continent that has really put transformation of food systems at the top of the agenda, it cannot happen if we don't get things right with climate-smart agriculture. If anything, climate-smart agriculture needs to be the agriculture for the continent. There cannot be another agriculture and then climate-smart agriculture on the side. Agriculture for the continent, in fact, climate-smart approaches need to drive the transformation for food systems on the continent. But we are also very clear that because of the domination of smallholder agriculture on the continent and the reality that smallholder farmers in this continent are operating in a broken food system, we cannot start to imagine climate-smart agriculture taking off at the kind of scale and pace that we require until we start to realize that it cannot happen in a broken food system. So concurrently, we want to build resilience, we want to build adaptive capacity, but we need to fix fundamental things about our food systems at the same time. So there are important fundamental things that are part of our food system that we need to get on top of. And just to quickly say, as the African Union Development Agency, we are really looking at our programs on climate-smart agriculture and looking at how that can become a part of how we solve for conditions that are necessary for the success of viable, smallholder agriculture. And we are obviously emphasizing sustainable intensification. There's no smallholder agriculture that's going to work without intensification, whether it's use of water, intensive use of water, efficient use of water, nutrients. But we are also realizing that young people need to be at the center of what we do, and the transformation that we're looking for will have to be driven by young people on this continent. So there's a deliberate focus on young people, but we don't want to throw them into systems that are not working, systems that are not rewarding for anyone who is involved. So we're looking at how best can we plug in smallholder, farming systems, together with young people in viable, but intensive and smart, ways of doing, agriculture on the continent. So we're looking at investable options that where the private sector see a good reason to invest, in getting these young people up to speed, but also in ensuring that, smallholder agriculture actually works on the continent. So these are some of the big things that we are looking at in terms of really looking at how do we step up to really the next challenge, because we've made good progress, we've made, we have good examples of where things are working, but we really need to take that big step, and we need to really step up and, make that leap to the next level. Thank you very much. I see my time is up. Thank you.
just want to state for the record, that wasn't me, so. Manya, well, thank you so much for sharing that vision with us. You sort of pointed us to where you're going. And now I now invite Ana Maria Lobo Guerrero to share some experiences of partnering to get there. Ana Maria is the director of ICRA. Welcome, Ana Maria.
Thank you very much, Lorraine. And I just want to use the occasion before I start my presentation to thank Phoebe publicly, because you have made my COP different, and I have learned so much by engaging with you all these days that I feel so honored. So I want to thank you because really you, in every panel, in every event that you have been participating, you are reminding us why are we here? Because I think that sometimes we forget. So I just wanted to say that. So what I'm going to do is, following minutes, just give an example of the topic of this side event today. So how are we working together? How institutions such as the CGIAR are working together with Africa, for Africa, in terms of being able that we produce the information that it's needed to make sure that farmers like Phoebe can benefit from this knowledge and that they can improve their livelihoods. So for people that do not know ICRA stands for Accelerating the Impact of CGIAR Climate Research for Africa. It's a project funded by the World Bank. It started 3 years ago, and it's a very unique project and very refreshing in the sense that the whole objective of ICRA is to get all the information that CGIAR has been generated in relation to climate solutions, climate smart agriculture, climate information services for the past 50 years, and then to make sure that these solutions reach the hands of Phoebe and all the farmers in Africa so that they can benefit from the implementation and adoption of these solutions. We are very happy to say that it has been a model that has demonstrated impact. We, at the beginning of the project 3 years ago, the aim was to reach 1.5 million smallholder farmers in Africa with these climate smart agricultural solutions. By now, we have been able to reach 5 million of those. So, how we have been doing this? We have been working through these strong partnerships. More than 90 partners that have been participating in this, going beyond the 6 focus countries in ICRA, being able to reach 41 countries through the work that CGIAR is doing with Africa regional organizations. We have been thinking a lot about how to scale these solutions, how to be able to reach more and more smallholder farmers in Africa. And I'm not going to go in detail, but I just want to emphasize that one of the key elements that, based on the work that we have been doing, we can reiterate and confidently say that has been fundamental is partnership. And this is what we are going to be discussing through the panel today. So I'm very happy to hear that. Just wanted to highlight some of the key partnerships where ICRA has been able to deliver specific solutions and changes happening. Really interesting work between CODAF and the Food Systems Resilience Program of the World Bank and ICRA in terms of promoting leadership in women and then making sure that we are building that capacity for women research in agriculture in Africa. We in ICRA believe that gender and social inclusion is a fundamental component to make sure that we can build this resilience against climate, and CODAF and the Food Systems Resilience Program has been strategic in order to achieve that. Second example, it's the partnership between ICRA, WASCAL, Roof Forum, and I'm so happy to have Florence in here. You're going to hear from her. It's amazing what she has been doing through this partnership. So what we have been doing is to develop university curricula in relation to climate smart agriculture and climate information services. This is the way to bring sustainability to these efforts. We need a new generation that understands what is needed to make sure that Phoebe and farmers in Africa can benefit from these climate smart solutions. And then in relation to climate information, very interesting partnership between IGAD, AgriMed, and ICRA in terms of building the next generation of Africa's climate forecasters. This is a really interesting example on how we have been able, through these regional organizations, to reach 30 meteorological services in Africa with these climate forecasts that are helping to make better decisions. I just want to end with this slide because this motivates me to continue doing this job. This is something that we started doing, and Laura here, she's the one responsible for this. So we started working with a close relationship with the African Union in terms of informing the Africa climate strategy. So we provided all the information, worked together in terms of what needed to be part of this plan, of this strategy. But we said we want to go beyond that. We want to help through our knowledge to implement this strategy. So we work with the African Union in terms of putting this together, of this idea of the Climatic Action Innovation Hub. This happening in Nairobi in September in the Africa Climate Summit. And what we did was that we invited 70 young innovators, entrepreneurs, to make their pitches in relation to ideas to implement the African climate strategy. And we support them through the work that ICRA has been doing in terms of climate finance. And what is really interesting is that investors that were sitting in the room were really eager to engage with these young people to make sure that these businesses were going to, or had the capacity to start. So that's a really interesting way of this partnership, closing the loop all the way from informing the strategy to helping in the implementation, and then making sure that this new generation, that they are the ones that are changing the future of Africa to respond better to climate challenges. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ana Maria Maniu and Phoebe, for giving us the ingredients for our panel. So let's get cooking. As I introduce the panel members, could they come up to the front and take a seat, and we'll get started. I'd like to introduce you to Edith Adera from the AFDB, who represents the African Development Bank Group, where she serves as the lead coordinator of the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program. It's a $25 billion partnership initiative which aims to scale up and accelerate climate action in Africa. Welcome. I welcome to the stage also Cliff Dlamini, who's Executive Director of the Center for Coordination of Agricultural Research and Development for Southern Africa, which is CARDESA, which works to harmonize the implementation of agriculture R&D in SADC member countries in Southern Africa. Welcome. I'd like to welcome Javier Mateo Vega from the CGIAR. Javier is Senior Director for Partnerships, Stewardship, Innovation, and Intelligence at CGIAR. I know Javier will be keen to speak to us today about how the CG 2030 strategy, how it relates to our discussion, and in particular, its new engagement framework. And finally, I wish to welcome Florence Nakayiwa, Deputy Executive Secretary of the Regional Universities Forum for Capacity Building in Agriculture, RUFORUM. Its mission is to strengthen capacities of African universities to foster innovations that are responsive to the demands of smallholder farmers. Welcome, everyone. Thank you. So, welcome, everybody. Can you hear me? Great. I want to start with a question for Florence, Edith, and Cliff, okay? And there's no need to be shy, all right? That's my invitation to you. In your view, have global partners like CGIAR delivered science and innovation on the scale needed to reach your ambitions in climate action? Why don't I ask Florence to go first? Yeah, go.
Okay, thank you so much. It's a yes and no response. And yes and no in the sense that we've had technologies, we've had practices, we've built technologies in the labs, we've built technologies in the fields. We may not have reached the level of these technologies reaching where they are supposed to be. So that is the scale I'm talking about. So we have them in numbers, but we need to have them on the ground. And one thing that Ana Maria brought out was that picture. If we are talking about Africa for Africa, by 2050, Africa will have 2.5 billion people, and 70% of those will be young people. So if you are talking about scale for technologies, then the young people have to be in this discussion. So we have to shift that narrative, see how we bring the young people in climate smart agriculture. That's why I like the innovation hub. So the pictures raise, I think we need to change these pictures from people like me, people like that gentleman there, or people like that lady there, and put the young people. And that way we are scaling, so that people know that when you're talking about climate smart agriculture and innovations, the young people are at the center of it. So the scale we need to shift the gears a little bit. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think building on her point, indeed, the CG system is known in terms of excellence, of producing the technology that we need. But having the technology in the hands of farmers, I think, has been a challenge. I think ACRA, based on your presentation, is trying to change and shift that through partnerships. And partnerships are absolutely critical, but ensuring that farmers are at the center of that partnership. So it has to be farmer-centric. And there has to be a 360 approach, 360-degree approach to providing support to farmers. What do I mean by that? It has to be multi-level, multi-stakeholder, including all the partners that are needed to actually deliver that. That's very critical. Within the African Development Bank, we have a very strong partnership with the CG system. And we're working with the CG to get these technologies from the labs, from the shelves, into the hands of farmers. And we have seen transformation. I think a very good case example is Ethiopia, that has actually shifted from being a net importer to a net exporter of wheat through some of these technologies. So it is possible to make that shift, but partnership is absolutely critical. I'd like to pick the last point on engaging young people. It's amazing what young people are doing on the ground. Under the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program, which I coordinate, we decided to deliberately have a youth pillar that focuses on supporting young entrepreneurs. So we do it through an annual competition. We give them grants, about 100,000, for enterprises that are already viable, existing, but need to go to scale. The kind of innovations that we're seeing in the agricultural space is amazing. So this year, we decided to focus specifically on women entrepreneurs. Said, are there women entrepreneurs out there that are employing fourth industrial revolution technologies at the community level and making a difference? It was amazing to see the technologies, and we actually unveiled those 8 winners at COP, and they're doing incredible things. So I totally endorse the need to include young people in agriculture. They're already making a difference on the ground. Thank you.
Okay, all right, please, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Program Coordinator. I think for me, I'm going to speak on behalf of CADESA and other sub-regional organizations. There is no question that the CG over the past 5 decades has done a great job, innovation technology. But I think the collaboration and partnership between CADESA and other sub-regional organizations is not very strong at the moment. To strengthen the relationship, I would actually suggest that the CG partner with CADESA through SADC, because SADC has the political capital required for acceleration of innovations. So the other issue for me is the way scaling is treated generally in African institutions and in other international institutions. We have to define what we mean by scaling, because scaling can be scaling up, looking at numbers. It can be scaling out, trying to change policies and institutions through innovation and technology. It can be scaling deep, now trying to change the narrative when it comes to cultures. There are some cultures that are deterrent to development and to the adoption of innovation. So if you scale up and you forget to scale out and scale deep, you might not win. So I think for me, on behalf of SROs and CADESA, we have to look at scaling in terms of scaling up, scaling out, and scaling deep. Then I think we can manage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I had no need to encourage you not to be shy, because you have been very clear about what all should change, and I want to actually turn it to Javier, who I know is not shy. We're hearing from our partners that they'd like to see the great innovation that CGIAR, and there's an appreciation for that, what they're creating, more firmly on the ground, with an emphasis on youth, and with partnerships that are farmer-centric. We're also hearing from Cliff that the relationship of the CG with sort of political centers of power, such as with Cardessa through SADC, just to have some push behind that is desirable. And finally, to really start speaking in a more nuanced way about what we mean about scaling together with our partners in Africa. So the question I have for you, Javier, is having heard all that, do you think that the CGIAR can respond in kind? And then is there more actually that you think we need to change? Over to you.
Thanks, Lorraine. So the short and simple answer, of course, is absolutely. There is no other way forward. And let me start by saying, Cliff, that, and I think for the rest of you, it's really no secret that CGIAR, like many other international organizations, has been called out for not doing better in terms of the way that it engages with partners. I think many international organizations are known or are considered to be organizations that sometimes supplant national systems, that compete with them, that don't share enough of the resources or the credit. And this is something that we need to take into very serious consideration. And I think in an organization like CGIAR, that's been around for 5 decades, as you mentioned, Cliff, and if you look under the hood, you're certainly going to find moments where our partners would say that we have operated in a suboptimal manner. But by the same token, and I think as has been expressed by both of you, there are certainly moments where I think CGIAR has demonstrated its capacity to be a good partner that is inclusive, collaborative, and demand responsive. And so I wanted to reference 2 things that are taking place within CGIAR. As many of you know, we're undergoing the most in-depth, far-reaching reform in our 50-year history. And one of the things that we've done recently is to constitute a formal partnerships function, partnerships and advocacy function within the organization. Partnerships used to be synonymous with fundraising, but we really wanted to create a function that is focused on partnership health. And so there's 2 things that we've done. At the highest level, we've created something that's called an engagement framework, and this sits at the pinnacle of the policy framework of the organization, and it is a very powerful and strong signal for our own staff and for our partners that we need to do better in terms of how we engage with our partners. And so we've created a series of systems and approaches, and most importantly, we've outlined a number of critical engagement principles to which we are all going to be beholden. And this is the law of the land. Some of these principles include elements such as the need to ensure complementarity in our engagement. It's not about coming over in and trampling over others or taking over the responsibilities of others. It's about shared ownership. It's about accountability and transparency. And these principles are being embedded in the DNA of the organization. They've been well informed by a high-level advisory panel that was appointed by the CGIAR board to guide CGIAR in doing better in the way that it engages with its partners. 3 high-level recommendations, 20 action points came in there, and we are taking them all on board in earnest. And then I wanted to use one very clear example of what we're doing in terms of doing better. We also have a next generation capacity development program, which we're calling capacity sharing for development, because we acknowledge that capacity development has that connotation of being sort of a unilateral relationship where there's one party that is the owner or the holder of the truth, and it's here to bestow it upon others. When we really understand that when we're engaging with partners, we have just as much to gain, and that this relationship is multi-directional, and we will only be successful if we're sharing our capacities and our assets. So under this new program of capacity sharing for development, we have one component that's called research engagement. And we're just prototyping this right now. We're working with Senegal, with Ethiopia, and with Rwanda, where we are funding the NARS to lead. We're not subcontracting to do work with us. We're funding them with support from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to lead research projects that are aligned to national needs and priorities, that are helping to embed more sustainable capacities in the NARS partners, and that are completely aligned to the priorities of the country. And this is a way of rebalancing historical power imbalances where often the NARs have become sources of subcontracts. And in worst case scenarios, I recently was told by a NARS partner, we're not cheap labor. We're not a source of cheap intellectual labor, and we hear you. And so this new research engagement component is something that's coming to change those dynamics. Now, I want to be very clear. This is something that we're piloting, and this is going to be another tool in a tool of different engagement modalities that CGIAR will employ. So if you ask me, am I going to wake up tomorrow and see a CGIAR that's only operating this way, I would be disingenuous to tell you if I said yes. We're not. We're transitioning in that. But my hope is, in a few years from now, we're all sitting on this stage together. I hope you'll be able to look at me and say, wow, I can really detect the transformation. And let me just close by saying that I think ICRA is doing a fantastic job in serving as a model for CGIAR to employ. And we really want to continue to work with you in this space because I think you're doing it the right way. Always room for improvement, but I think we're taking steps in the right direction forward. Thank you.
No, thank you. I mean, I think we all appreciate some very forthrightness about what the problems have been, as well as the appreciation that was received, and then tailoring the solutions to that, because it sounds like a lot of what you listed in terms of this new strategy, this new transitional way of, well, the transitioning to a new way of doing this actually touches on a lot of points that our fellow panelists raised that they would like to see changed, although we could maybe return to this question of sort of youth and community-centric as well in a second round. So if we look forward to a future where those relationships are strengthened in the way that our partners are requesting, I'd like to turn back to Edith and say, all right, let's look with hope and with certitude to that future. How can Africa, what more is needed for Africa's agricultural research systems to be strengthened to deliver a climate-smart transition in agriculture by, say, 2030? Do you want to pass the mic? Yeah.
Sure. I see a couple of things. I think let me start from where you left, which to me I call institutionalization. There has to be ownership in the hands of African institutions if we are truly to make the partnership work. And when I talk about institutionalization, what I mean is that there should be co-creation from the start. They should be on the driver's seat with technical support if needed to get it done. So that way, we not only institutionalize the capacities from the get-go, but we actually ensure that they are the ones who are driving the change that is required. That's one. Two, sustainability is absolutely critical because if you look at a number of these programs, they're time-bound. You're told you have a 5-year program and it ends. So sustainability becomes very critical. And I'll explain sustainability in different aspects. One is, if we look at climate change, there's a lot of change happening. Even the technologies you build today, in terms of agriculture technologies, will not be relevant in a few years. So there's a technical change as well. So when we are looking at sustainability, we have to ensure that the skills needed to produce the technologies of the future is in the hands of the Africans, and that we are cognizant of the fact that that change will happen. And therefore, we need to look at sustainability in terms of the technical sustainability of producing these technologies. Sustainability in terms of financial, because a lot of these programs, when they end, you're told that there was this great program, it ended, and therefore that work has ended. But if we institutionalize and include it in the budgets, and it becomes part and parcel of the business of governments or African institutions, then you have financial sustainability, because it's embedded in the way they do business. So that becomes important, that you look at both institutionalization and sustainability in doing some of these things and in funding. And that's why I really appreciate the way in which you are experimenting with this new model, because we've done it and it works. And I think you will have excellent success in the countries where you're trying, because that's where you'll have real change. The last point that I'd like to make is the importance of the policy framework and the enabling environment to actually make this transition happen. It's absolutely critical, so that we are not just looking at providing technologies and trying to solve problems at the grassroots level alone, but what kind of policy environment is needed to make it thrive. So therefore, policy reforms, support to governments to put the right policies in place becomes very important. Thank you.
No, thank you for that. I mean, the point about institutionalization and capacity building sort of harkens to what Ana Maria was saying sort of in her earlier describing of ICRA, how that focus on partnership is. And I think you've unpacked that very well in terms of sustainability, which is what's being sought by the team, that when ICRA ends, the work continues. Florence, how does the African Union Climate Change and Resilient Development Strategy and Action Plan that we got a little debrief on at the beginning of this session inspire your strategy and action at Reforum?
Thank you so much for that. I'll start with a hallelujah to what I've said, because it's something that we've been looking forward to, and what Edith is saying also adds into this. The strategy in itself inspires us by saying that the last axis is they are leveraging existing flagships. And by leveraging existing flagships, that means that you look at systems that have worked, systems that are able to integrate the different aspects of production. And we should be mindful of the fact that when we are talking about climate smart agriculture, why do we want climate smart agriculture? We want to increase production, we want to increase livelihood, we have to put food on the table for everybody on the continent. So when we are talking about leveraging existing systems, existing initiative, it means that as Reforum, we are working in 40 countries. And we are using the university system. And we know that the university system has young people. And these young people are the same people that are going to go out there. But we also know that if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go with others. So the CG system coming in, the bank coming in, the SROs coming in. So we are looking at this ACRA program together with the African Union strategy, because they did play a great role in looking at the partners and the different aspects that bring this together to increase how we live on the continent comfortably. So as Reforum, our vision is how do we catalyze universities to promote sustainability of the food system on the continent. So this climate strategy is increasing how we work and how we work with others, how we work with the CG system, how we work with the SROs, how we work with all the other partners in this space to increase how food and production can be. So the system, the strategy that the AU has put forward is quite instrumental in, but it is not a standalone, in bringing together these other aspects that can then promote how we operate, how we live as Africans in Africa to promote food production and sustainability. We are talking about poverty, this is livelihoods, and all those things feature in our vision as Reforum. How do we change the space that we live in? Thank you so much.
What you're saying is very important because it speaks directly to what was being said about sustainability, right? Because this is around capacity, technical capacity, et cetera, that is to staff these future institutions in Africa. So it's a very important point that you're making about sort of that consolidating role of the African Union strategy and how it translates through the university system and leveraging the systems that you have already. So Cliff, just before I do sort of a one-rounder with everybody, I wanted to return to you. Having heard Javier describe the shifts in the strategy of partnership, do we need to change anything else, the way global partners like CGIAR support?
Oh, thank you. I think I have to mention that there were growing tensions between the African organizations in agriculture research and development and between the CG. But I think maybe with the new approach, the tensions will be eased. But what I want to make very clear is building upon my other point of collaboration between CG and CADESA and SADC. Like, for instance, my colleague mentioned that there are some countries that have been selected as pilots where the CG is working with NARES. SADC established, the SADC member states established CADESA to coordinate research and development in Southern Africa. We are covering 16 member states working directly with NARES. But in the spirit of subsidiarity, we work with the NARES as our entry point to the member states, but we don't go to the ground as such. So it would be prudent for all parties concerned that if CG is going to work in our region, CADESA is involved through collaboration official, because our client is the smallholder farmer. In the NARES actually, is the NARES. So if there's an organization that will work with NARES in my region, I would like to be involved. Not to say I'm going to stop anything, but just to be involved to know what is happening. Because we are coordinating agriculture research and development, we are going to be contributing to scaling, scaling up, scaling out, scaling deep. So when organizations come to our region, they have to greet us as the custodians in our region. So then the tensions won't be there. It's just that, if that can be encouraged.
Yeah, no, I think that's
But
very
having
practical.
said that, I want to appreciate the IACRA project as a model of excellence, because the collaboration between CADESA and IACRA has been exceptional. Scaling CSA and CIS, which is Climate Smart Agriculture and Climate Information Systems, we are doing quite well. And it's a CG project. So already there's a model of excellence.
Right.
And they go to our region with us. Thank you.
Well, no, thank you. Listen, before we wrap this panel up, I have a challenge for you. I would like each of you in one sentence, there's a limit on how many subclauses you put in that sentence, okay? In one sentence, in 10 years from now, what should the partnership look like? What's your vision for future collaboration with global partners like the CG?
I want to see a mainstreamed system where the CG and research organizations on the continent and universities, a complete loop of the NAS working together in unison for the benefit of Africans.
That was a long one.
It was a good sentence, just at the limit of the subclause, but it was good.
I think for me, I would say that it's an all-rounded approach to providing support to Africa. And I would draw on what we are doing, which we are calling the agricultural compacts at the national level, which brings all the systems together and all the stakeholders together to deliver on a common agenda.
Unity,
that's the approach we need to follow.
Excellent. Yes, you too.
Fantastic. I would say a triple bottom line: scientific, incredibly high impact scientific outcomes and outputs jointly developed, strengthened scientific national systems in general, and most importantly, partnerships that are very healthy and happy and prosperous.
Thank you.
I
If
think
you
my-
try that triple bottom line thing, Go ahead, Cliff.
I think for me, it's very simple and straightforward. We need to reconcile our programs and strategies because we have a common vision and we have got a common stakeholder. Thank you.
Yes, excellent. Listen, before we you join me in thanking the panel, I just want to, in light of the kind words and the appreciation that's been expressed for ICRA, repeat an announcement that was made earlier during the COP, where the World Bank announced that it would make an additional US $100 million available to CGIAR between 2024 and 2025 through the ICRA project to see this vision through. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. You may return. Thank you. Okay, so one last request. I'd like to ask Phoebe to return to the podium. Sorry?
10 minutes. 10 minutes for Q&A.
Oh, yes, yes, of course. Why don't we do question and answer first?
Phoebe.
Is that good, Phoebe? Okay, good, yes, let's do our Q&A. Would you like the panel to remain at the front then?
Yes. Yes, sorry.
All right, my bad,
Sorry.
bad moderator. Okay, please come back. You just stretched your legs. It was your health I had in mind. And Florence, yes. I'm sorry, Reese.
It's okay.
All right.
I should have intervened.
Yeah, you don't assemble a panel like this and have inputs like that without giving people an opportunity to discuss. So please let us take some questions. Great.
Keep them very brief and focused. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. My name is Nzombe Joshua. I'm the National Secretary for Youth for Zimbabwe Farmers Union. And I'm so privileged to be here. I'm also an executive member of the Pan-African Farm Organization, an organization which collaborates efforts of farmers organizations around Africa. My comment was on Edith. Thank you so much for talking about young people and the involvement of young people being on the nucleus of all our discussions. And in short, I would love to say, let's make sure that young people, especially young farmers, are not just the menu on the table, but they are also part and parcel of all discussions. And let's remember, young people, they constitute 52%. And I would love us to thank CADESA for giving us this opportunity to be here and to hear and participate and give the farmers voice. Can you please clap hands for them? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just
I'm Kolola Haluindi. I represent women in agriculture in Zambia. My question is on the impact. At the moment, most of the projects that we do as a continent, we look at the numbers. Is there a possibility at one stage that we start looking at the impact in terms of the value that we create? If it's climate smart agriculture, what sort of production, productivity has increased in that area, so that now we start marrying the numbers to the impact that it has made? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Kune Dauda from Wascal, Director of Capacity Building. So I want also to emphasize on one thing, is bringing young is very important, but we need to think also how to sustain the collaboration, the transition between the young and the older people, because those are, the old people are also really knowledgeable in terms of knowledge in agriculture. Don't bring young people without any transition. If not, it will be, young people are technology, they are knowledgeable on technology, but we need to be careful also and bring this transition. We are talking even in energy about the transition. Transition is very important. Don't let down the older people. They are very, very useful too for this transition. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. My name is Eric Omolo from Kenya. I work for Conrad Adenauer Foundation for a program in Africa on energy security and climate change. My question, I think the discussion here has been very rich, and especially on the collaboration. And of course, we're also looking at the issues of the fourth industrial revolution of the technologies in that context. I would like to just ask, where do we see the space of the informal systems or informal way of doing things? Like we have technologies or, well, not technology, but way in which communities have lived, have done their things, have produced and such. Where is the space of this in the revolution, in the collaboration, and creating sustainability that we are talking about here? Because I think most of the time it has just been something we mention, but really the effective way of integrating that, I still don't see that.
Okay, thank you for that. Oh, someone is desperate here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is let's try to answer these, and if we have a minute, then we'll return. Okay, so there was a question from our friend from Zimbabwe on youth. And then there was another question about the transition between generations from this gentleman here. So I'd like sort of Edith to take one and Florence to take the other. Do you have a preference, Florence, between sort of intergenerational question and the youth question, which was really a question about what are the practical ways, if I understood you correctly, what are the practical ways that we can make sure that youth are a part of every discussion around this future, around this climate strategy? So how about you take that one, Florence, and then Edith, I'd like to turn to you about this sort of intergenerational transition. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. When we are talking about capacity building is not only in skilling, but it is also in agency. The fact that you can be able to raise these issues is, we have brought out of school youth, that also brings in the informal sector, but we have also increasingly taken the extracurricular skills that provide the youth with voice and appreciation, knowing that you will need much more than just the skill. You might know a lot of stuff, but unless you get your attitude and the other aspects of life correct, you will not be able to get into this whole space called agriculture for development. And knowing that being a young person doesn't mean that you have to wait for the whole or wait for you to tell you what to do. You also have to be part of the system. So we are really promoting agency in the young people to speak for themselves. When she talks about entrepreneurship, we've done a lot of entrepreneurship programs, and those entrepreneurship programs promote how the youth relate in the real world. So it's like training people to live in the real world. That's what we are attempting to do.
Yeah, just a quick word on, I don't think you intended that the focus on youth should be exclusively on youth, but maybe just, who has the mic over there? Just a quick word about that intergenerational point that the gentleman is making.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical, one, to build on where communities are at. That's absolutely critical. The ways in which they have done agriculture, and to build off that. That's number one. Two, I will draw on practical experience, having gone to the field myself to look at these young farmers and how they were working with older farmers and trying to change mindsets. What was two things that struck me is, one, they mentioned that there's a bit of a challenge in changing mindsets. That was definitely there. And therefore the need of having a gender lens, looking at what are the impacts of climate on both men and women, and how then do you change the mindset to be able to help people make that shift. But what I witnessed, which is the second point, is where farmers see the value in terms of increased production, increased income, and I think you made a very important point about the impacts, you found that that shift was not difficult, because then they realized that technology is changing, the world is changing, and provided it meets their needs in terms of their agricultural objectives, then it was much easier to make that shift. So I totally agree that that intergenerational kind of dialogue and intergenerational collaboration is very critical. But there are a lot of barriers that need to be broken down for one to make that possible.
I actually appreciate that, in that one answer also we have spoken a little bit to this move from reach to impact, which is something that the follow-on activities of ICRA is also interested in shifting to. I think that's a very good point. There is an outstanding question about the space of informal systems and traditional approaches and what role they play. I think that's a super interesting discussion. I actually would invite that we follow up on that question as soon as we conclude this, because we're just right at time, but I don't want it to be lost. So perhaps we could convene at the end to discuss that. Yes. So I'm going to now, correctly this time, invite Phoebe up to the podium to give some concluding comments. Cliff?
I think there was a question on impact assessment.
Sorry? On impact? Yeah, the shift towards impact? Yeah, exactly. We can carry that discussion further. Panelists, thank you so much. Take two. Yes, we rehearsed this, so. Thank you, Phoebe.
Our moderator for this opportunity. I think I'll go home a happy farmer because the panelists have demonstrated goodwill towards the farmer. And what they have said about farmer-centered, I think that one has carried the day. If the whole thing is going to be farmer-centered, then we are good to go. Because it is the farmer who is the implementer. You may do your policies, you may do your research, but you will not implement them. It is the farmer, whether young or old, whether female or male. It is the farmer who is the implementer. So, thank you. So thank you to the panelists. I was worried that the partnership is not strong, but I think it has been strengthened. Thank you, World Bank. What you have said has really moved me, that you are there for us and you want us to be strong in farming and producing for the families. Thank you, the universities. The young people, they will not take farming as a punishment. They're going to take it as a business this time, and they will do it for the family and for themselves and for their countries and the world as at large. Thank you, everyone.
That concludes our session. Thank you, everybody. And for those who wish to carry on the discussion about either impact or informality, please do remain. Up to the front for a photograph.